Um, I think I've heard you talk about a fundamental principle of non-aggression being a way to apply to governance or getting a lot done. Could you talk a little bit about that?
About the non-aggression principle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, because this is the most important thing that I think that humanity is missing at our core, is what the philosophers call a universal morality. It used to be a long time ago that it's just, whatever caveman had the biggest club and the most big friends would set the rules. And then the church came along and actually developed a set of ethics. It's at the core of any great religion is a set of ethics, whether they're right or not, that it's at least an attempt. And however, they didn't agree, big churches, they didn't agree with each other or even amongst themselves. And so they fought the Crusades and everything, and then were responsible for more deaths than any entity in history. So then the state came along, the whole idea of the nation state, and the rule of law. So it didn't have to be based on God's word. Human beings could get together and create ethical laws, and then people would be bound by the rule of law. However, there's almost always corrupt people leading those states, and then the states want power over each other. And so then they started fighting, and then they were responsible for even more deaths than the church. It was the most murderous entity in history as the nation state, responsible for over 200 million murders in the 20th century alone, not counting wars. So that's just within your borders. The governments are murdering over 200 million people in a century. So rule of law, great idea, but we haven't taken it to where it needs to go yet. And that's where the non-aggression principle comes in. Because what I think we've been missing is a universal morality based on logic, based on science, based on coherent philosophy. And the non-aggression principle matches all of that. The non-aggression principle simply says that no one is allowed to initiate force or fraud against anyone else except in true self-defense. In other words, you have the right to protect yourself, but you can't start a fight. And it sounds so simple that everybody goes, well, yeah, of course. But then they turn right around, and over 95% of the people on the planet vote for some political leader who is then going to take your money against your will to run a government, which is going to control other people, and then send your children off to wars against, we've seen every single government in history has been corrupt, and it's not coincidence, because they all depend on taxation. Taxation is actually theft. So every government is corrupt right at its core. And it's no wonder that then it manifests as corrupt out in the world. So what's the alternative to that? The universal application of the non-aggression principle is not communism, fascism, socially, or even democracy, which is just, a majority vote at its best. The only coherent form of association is voluntary association. That means basically anybody can do whatever they want as long as they're not violating someone else or violating an ecosystem. And we're all kind of trained to think, oh, that's going to be chaos and blood in the streets. No, you're not allowed to create blood in the streets. You'll get in trouble for that. You're not allowed to pollute the air. You're not allowed to pollute the water. You're not allowed to cheat and steal and all that kind of stuff. So there would be ethics. There would be courts in the sense that they're dispute resolution organizations. There are insurance companies. There are security companies. So all the functions that we're looking for from government would be there, but they wouldn't be from a few people who have a monopoly on force. That's the problem. So what it would be is there would be a free market of private security organizations. Everybody thinks, oh, that's Blackwater. Now we're just going to be, the rich guys are going to be starting wars with their private armies. No, you can't do that. As soon as you start doing any kind of violation with your security team, then you would be immediately personally and professionally liable. You wouldn't have any customers. You wouldn't have any insurance. You would be incarcerated if you were actually initiating violence. So it's simply not going to work. So the key is you'll have all these institutions. You'll still have businesses. You'll still have clubs and associations, and all that will happen, but it will all be decentralized. It'll all be voluntary, and everybody as an individual will be held accountable to the non-aggression principle. And then the last thing I want to say in my quick overview of this is that, you know, I tried to make a good case logically and coherently for, yes, this would make sense. Now, the great news is that everywhere that Kimberly and I have traveled in the world, we talk about this all the time. We have ask everybody, what do you think of the non-aggression principle? Do you want to be violated against your will? And we haven't found a single person who wants to be violated against their will. Now, yes, we have run across a few who, you know, who want to be spanked and whipped and so forth, but not against their will. You know, and if two people agree to do that consensually, that's a whole different thing. That's not initiating violence against somebody involuntarily. So look what we've got. We've got not only a philosophically and logically coherent ethic, but it turns out that everybody agrees to it already. You know, it's challenging to get, you know, your business to decide on a logo, to get your family to decide on where to go to dinner. Imagine how challenging it is to get the entire humanity, 7.6 billion people, all to agree on one ethic, and they already do. That's where the science and the philosophy come together in the morality. Now, I have to admit, I have met a few people who say, okay, yeah, I don't want to be violated against my will, but I do believe I should be able to violate other people in order to rule them, because I'm richer, I'm whiter, I'm more educated, I'm smarter, I'm more clever, I'm darker, right? Whatever it is, all these tyrants have some justification. You know, it's either an ethnicity or a class or a nation state, some excuse why they should be able to go out and start a war or take people's stuff. But none of it holds up to the non-aggression principle. So our big challenge now to survive and thrive without massive global violence is to have a critical mass of people understand this simple principle, because when they do, we don't have to have, you know, everybody on earth be enlightened in order to live harmoniously. We need enough people enlightened in the sense of a universal morality to actually create our systems of law based on one simple rule, the non-aggression principle. Everything else comes out of that, and we're not there yet. Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We've been moving toward national sovereignty, local sovereignty, and now individual sovereignty for a long time. The birth of America was a great step, but we're not there. We still had the seeds of the cancer of authority built in to our Constitution. And the Declaration of Independence was a really strong start. It was almost there, but then it's been bastardized and destroyed ever since. So I think we understand now what needs. I believe enough of us are starting to understand what we need. Now it's a question of how do we use this incredible global media system to simply awaken people to what they would already agree to if they understood it. That was a really long-winded answer, but that was a big
amazing.
question.
Thank you. Yeah.